Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome at the online edition of 24th Ji.hlava International Documentary Film Festival the two directors of the Madagascar film ZAHO ZAY, if I pronounce it correctly, the French director Maéva with a very complicated surname, and the co-director of the film, Georg Tille from Austria. So welcome, and please, because I guess I screw your name, so please introduce yourself correctly. And just a short introduction, I am Haruna Honcoop, a programmer of this year's festival, programming the Hong Kong section and hosting the Q&As. Welcome.
Hi, yes, I'm Maéva Ranaïvojaona from, I have Malagasy origins, and I'm the French co-director of the film.
And I'm Georg Tille. I'm based in Austria and in Paris, and we went on this trip to Madagascar together to make this film happen.
So tell us, how did it all happen then?
So we went in Madagascar previously to make some scouting location for my first feature film, and Georg was the producer on board, but we know that it's very long to produce a film, and so we went there for scouting location, but also with good material, camera, and so on. And we discovered on the island my uncle, who became the main character of the film, the dice killer. And he was so amazing and convincing in front of the camera and among all those landscapes, so that we started to shoot for the first 2 months, just with him in the different landscapes that we were visiting. And so the film started from this point on.
And actually, before we returned the first time back to Europe, we were approached by an NGO, another relative of Maéva, who runs this NGO, who is dealing with prisoner rights in Madagascar. And so they were asking us if we were interested in making a promotional film about the work of the NGO in the prison system in Madagascar. And so we found this proposition very interesting, but we had to reflect on how we could use this also maybe for our own film. And so we proposed them that we can make them a film, which we also did, which was shown on Malagasy TV. That talks more about the work of the NGO. But on the other hand, we wanted to be a bit more free and shoot for our own film. And in let's say, in this half year that was between our first travel in Madagascar and the second shoot in the prison system, we invented this story about the prison guard and her fantasies about her father and so forth. So it came together a bit by chance, like also the film talks a lot about chance and things like that.
Thank you. For the online audience, I would like to remind that you can ask questions through the Q&A form, or you can raise your hand and ask directly. So I would like to ask meaning of ZAHO ZAY. What does it mean? Is it a name of one of the characters or some location, or what is that? Because we didn't translate it in the catalog.
So ZAHO ZAY, it's a way in Malagasy to say, it's me, I'm present. And actually in the film, you see it because when the prisoners go out of their cell one by one, passing by the prison guard, they say, ZAHO ZAY, it's me. So it's about identity, about presence, and it's also a word that one would say, for example, at school. When the teacher calls your name, it's the way to say, it's me, I'm there, ZAHO ZAY. So it's something that we took for the title, but that you can see also through the film.
Yeah. So if it's a story about your uncle, so is it really truly based on true events, or did you somehow manipulate the reality? Because there is this very lyric voiceover of the female character who is telling us the story. So can you tell us a little bit more?
So yeah, I mean, it's a film with a lot of layers, you could say, and a lot of different elements that we took to create it. And I mean, one part of the film is totally staged, which is the part of the story of the father. And the other part, the part in the prison, it's reality in the sense that we take this location, this prison, and we only marginally interact with what is really happening. In a way, in previous films of mine, I mean, it's a documentarist approach that you arrive at the place and you discover it through the camera, but also by being present there every day for an extended period of time. Because of course, in the beginning, you're also overwhelmed by everything that is happening there. The text, it's another layer because this was written by a Malagasy poet for us. We had a skeleton of the story, which was the story of this female prison guard who actually waits for her father to arrive one day in this prison and imagines what could have been in the past. And through these imaginations, she reflects on the history of the island of Madagascar, the history of colonialism, but also a very personal story about a very idealized father figure, you could say. So you have elements that are observational in a very documentary approach, and you have really completely staged elements. And the story itself, it's really a combination of us three, Maéva, me, and also our writer. And we sort of created it together. And it reflects, of course, a lot of Malagasy history, but also very universal topics about the relationship to your father, memories of childhood, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So from what you have seen, how is the Malagasy prison? Is it like a hardcore African prison that we can imagine, or is it somehow like did it inherit from the ex-French colonialism something, or how are the conditions for the inmates?
Well, it's a very horrific condition. Of course, when we arrived in the prison previously, very little was filmed about it. And the year before, there were a little film from Amnesty International, but it's a very opaque system. Nobody really enters it. And even we had some Malagasy people coming forward to us after screenings, telling us we had no idea this was the conditions of the inmates. So the biggest problem is that there is not enough food. The prison you see in the film is supposed to host 250 inmates, and it's hosting nowadays 800. But the budget, and especially the food budget, stays the one for 250 persons. So they are fed only with this manioc that you see, that is like leftovers from the markets. And so of course there is a lot of problem, stomach problem, teeth problem, and inmates die out of starvation because it's really not a food that can complete a normal food habit for a few months. So that's one of the main problems there. It's really this issue.
And I would say the other problem, or even, I mean, on top of it, 70% of the people in the prison, they are not yet convicted. So they are waiting for the trial. And it can take between 3 and 5 years sometimes that you have to wait until you trial. And maybe after 3 years, you're not guilty, or after 5 years, you're not guilty, but you spent this amount of time in these conditions without anything, you know? And so it's of course also a class problem, because the more wealthy fragments of Malagasy society, they will never end in a place like this. But if you are poor, and even some people are just falsely claiming that you stole something or that you did this, you can very easily end up in this prison and wait for what must feel like an eternity before you have your trial.
Mm-hmm. And because there are not so many films from Madagascar, and also at the Ji.hlava program we haven't screened that many Malagasy films. Can you maybe put your film within the whole context of the Malagasy documentary cinema, or even explain us what's the current stage of the cinematography in Madagascar?
It's really impossible to compare it with what we are used to, let's say, in 2/3 of the world, or even more, because there is nothing. There are no institutions, there are no cinemas, there is no screening opportunities, there is no material, there is most people, I would say most people don't even have a TV. That means cinema or even TV is not really in the Malagasy consciousness so much. There is, of course, a mini scene, you could say, that is mostly supported by the Institut Français in Madagascar. They also have short film festival there every year. But there was once a film in the Cannes Film Festival from Madagascar in the 1970s, and there isn't really much happening in Madagascar at the moment. And actually, we are planning to open a little production company, hopefully next year, and hopefully once this whole COVID situation is a bit better. And we are really very interested in working together with other Malagasy filmmakers and to support a bit more the cultural scene there, because right now it's a bit of a desert.
Mm-hmm. And so if you say there is really no trace of cinema TV, so how did they look at you when you went there with your film crew? Were they open enough? Because I imagine maybe some of them have never seen a camera in their life. So how did they accept you and how did they collaborate with you?
Well, they were very, very welcoming. Especially we went also in extremely traditional remote villages where really they wouldn't have seen a camera, but they were usually very welcoming and very happy that people from the external world come to them and acknowledges their existence, especially old people, children, and they were a kind of very great freedom to be in front of the camera, not so much references. And so every time we would start to ask somebody to be filmed, there were really just a kind of happiness toward the idea of having an exchange and having images from Madagascar spreading a bit in the world. So it was an extremely privileged way to navigate with the camera, and especially among the prisoners. There were people that are really locked. Nobody knows about their fate and about what is happening. So when we entered with the camera, we were, of course, not knowing what to expect. And in fact, it was almost a competition of who would be the most funny or the most interesting in front of the camera. And really, we were welcomed in the whole island with open arms concerning this.
Mm-hmm. But Maéva, you have the part of your heritage comes from there. So did this help to break the ice, break the walls?
Absolutely. I mean, for the prisoners, it was important. I explained because the city where the prison is also the city where my father was born and his 8 sisters and brothers. So I was somehow rooted in this place, and it was important for the prisoners to see that it was not a total stranger that would come. But my father went away, and as his daughter, I came back to do something and look at them and discuss and work together. This was very important. And also for this film, that was extremely precious because, as you can see in the film, we also participate and film some kind of very intimate rituals of the dead, of the burials. And this was really helped by the extensive family that I had that could really ask friends to friends, okay, they are interested in this, could we invite them? How would we proceed? And in every part of the island we could be hosted. And so it's really a family supported film because we went there without the budget for this very film, and we could still really have the doors opening very, very easily and fast, which was a great luck.
Mm-hmm. And I just would like to remind audience that you can still ask questions if by the function Q&A, type it down or raise your hand and ask directly if you have any questions about the film or any questions about Madagascar, and you can ask directly to the filmmakers. So what you describe seems a little bit like an anthropological approach, that you're going to this sort of undiscovered place. And so for your future projects, you mentioned that you want to start a production company there. What kind of films you want to make there?
Well, it depends. I mean, first of all, we would like to support the filmmakers that are there. And at the moment, it's interesting because even though like cinema life in Madagascar ended with the colonization stopping, also the cinema were shut down, but they were a faraway history. And some very young filmmakers start to make short films and try to be internationally recognized. There is also some little documentaries that we saw around and some kind of energy willing to develop. So the production company would be open for that. And in our side, we are, of course, we made these scouting locations for other feature coming, and feature films which really goes even deeper into the communities. We managed to know these prison systems that is really in need to be represented, and so yeah, more is coming.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there was Amnesty International working on the spot, and I guess probably various NGOs. So like these NGOs are making some content and are informing about the situation there, or how is that?
Well, but very little from what we know. So, I mean, also what these NGOs are doing, for instance, the NGO we worked with, for our realm of experience, it seems quite crazy, but they are trying that the prisoners have some workshops where they can produce little jewelry or things like that that they would sell, so they are able, with this money that they earn, to buy their own food. Because I mean, there is not enough food, and that's just really an atrocity
and an emergency.
And an emergency. So I mean, we know that now, because of this COVID situation, there were some prisoners released, but at the same time, you know, Madagascar, this whole tourism money is missing right now. So we don't even want to imagine the situation, how it will be on the island once we are able to return there. You know, it will not be better, that's for sure. So
there will be much to do, but as everywhere else, we need to reconsider how to approach again the situation, contact the people. And so yeah, it's for now everything is on hold, and it's a whole thing to reconstruct when we are back to see a bit how to continue further the possibilities.
And Madagascar lives from the tourists.
No, actually, tourism is just one. I mean, so Madagascar is one of the 10 poorest countries in the world. And it's a bit of a mystery. There's a very interesting book written about it, which is called Puzzle and Paradox, because on the one hand, they have a lot of natural resources, but it's one of the few countries that the economy declined from the 1970s to now. So in the 1970s, people had a better living standard than they have today. And there are really a lot of different aspects that run into this. Partly is certainly the aftermath of colonization, because a lot of the industry is still owned by France. Also, France still has a lot of impact on political decisions in Madagascar. But of course, there is also a mentality of clans, corruption, and things like that. And this all goes hand in hand with really not helping this country, which is very beautiful, to develop economically. You know, it's almost, you come there and it's almost like a time machine. You feel like you are in the 19th century, because there's no electricity in a lot of places. There's no running water. It's at the same time, it's so fascinating because the culture is so strong. You know, they have such a diverse culture. There are 18 different tribes in Madagascar, which are very distinctive from each other. and it's just a real universe. And I mean, for us, it's a really a treasure box to come there and to discover this. And with the help of Maéva's family, we have so much liberty to discover things. And I think, I mean, film is such a good tool to transport these realities that so few people are aware of. So we really hope that we can continue with this work.
So is it one of your goals, like by bringing films from there to somehow support the country? And
I wouldn't go that far, but I wouldn't get that far, of course. But we would really, really like to help a bit the cultural scene in Madagascar, to teach them a bit how it works, how that they can penetrate these international film festivals, teach them a bit about, you know, camera and editing and things like that. So this is really really groundwork, more than you know. And so also, because with Maéva's family, we're not just some Western people who come there, but we really feel way more integrated, and we think that this really is an excellent combination of things, you know.
And there is really beauties in Madagascar, very interesting traditions that are still very alive, a lot of passionate people that just need a little step to access the possibilities and access visibility to be able to bloom a bit. And I think Madagascar could be represented way better in a few years if we try out, if we give it a chance.
Because obviously from the tourism point of view, like definitely I've seen commercials on Madagascar, and now when you tell me it's one of the 10 poorest countries in the world, like I totally wouldn't like get these things together, like absolutely not. Because if you tell me Bhutan or some really small countries, I would say yes, like, or Bangladesh, you know, but Madagascar, I just have in mind all these fancy beaches and commercials. So it's
really
quite shocking, yeah.
There is, of course, you know, there is one region, especially in Madagascar, which is these beaches that you're referring to there, which is really expensive. This is like all-inclusive clubs and things like that. But this is inaccessible for anyone from Madagascar, of course, you know. It was also interesting when we were collaborating with Maéva's family and we were going all over the island. There were so many places they had never seen before, because it costs a lot of money to go from one place to another. And also, you know, the streets are in a horrible state. It takes forever to go from one place to another. So, yeah.
And is French government or France still somehow responsible for their ex-colonies? Do they take any responsibility whatsoever?
They take the vanilla. they take a lot of the goods, of course, you know, which are still in you know, vanilla. It's more expensive than silver, for instance, and vanilla is famously coming from Madagascar. There are really big plantations, also sugar, things like that. But we don't see much of the support. I mean, of course, you have the Institut Français, which is like in so many colonial situations, there's the main square of the capital, and there, poof, you have a big Institut Français, and at the same time, it's cool that they're supporting the cultural scene, but it also feels a bit like a landmark of the colonizer, you know, so it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, it's paradoxical. For the vanilla, for example, no, that's true that there is a plantations and products that go abroad and that Malagasy people don't even know anymore. You never see vanilla in Malagasy cuisine, and it's not a product that Malagasy people would ever access, really. So there is really still, colonization has stopped, but the good products and the good material that exist on the island still goes away, and the island is impoverished by this running away of the goods. So I don't know, it's quite complicated, but of course colonization has its aftermath there pretty heavily.
And when we go back to the theme of your film, like these prisoners, the crimes they have done, is it serious, or is it more like just some small little crimes that are not that serious?
Yeah, no, murder and political crimes are all referred to the prison in the capital. So these people that are in the prison we could film are not convicted for anything, how to say, serious, where it would endanger the population itself.
It's more like theft, you know, from mobile phones to food to breaking into cars, even though there are very few cars in this country. Things like that. I mean, yeah, one thing, they steal animals, so farm animals. This is very common.
Which is a big crime in Madagascar also. So this is serious, but the political crimes or murders were not those that are hosted in this prison. So yeah.
But still, like you mentioned, that they can be sentenced for 3-5 years, or just waiting for the trial for that many years. So
that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is also because we were working with this NGO and there are lawyers, and this is against the constitution of Madagascar. So, but it is done like this, and so what do? You know? And there's people, if you cannot afford a lawyer or whatever, of course you will stay there forever. I mean, until this bureaucracy, which is very slow, finally reaches your case.
And did you have chance to collaborate with local lawyers?
Yeah, because yeah.
Yes, one of the founders of the NGO is a lawyer, and discussing a bit about how things are done. But I think before even to go that far, the problem of poverty is a bit paralyzing every further discussion, because, for example, in the prison you see, there is this 800 prisoners, and we were discussing a bit with the administration staff and so on, who told us, look, we have just one typing machine for the whole administration, and we have to take turns every day if we want to have the chance to use it. We have one computer for the whole staff. So the bureaucracy is a problem, but even before to really attack things in a way we would attack it in Europe, for example, there is really this poverty and money trouble, because what do you do in an administration that needs to process every document with a one typing machine? And what happens when this typing machine breaks? I mean, it's really down to very emergency issues.
And what do you see as a solution? Like, you guys, when you know the region, you talk to lawyers, to the NGO. So what do you think like the Westerners, foreigners could do to support if they care?
Well, we can maybe on our website, we will put a link to this NGO, and of course you can support it, but it is a problem that will not be very easily solved. I can tell you that this will take a long time, but of course this NGO is run by Malagasy people, so it's very good that they are engaged in these problematics. A film like this, what we did, because when we screened it in Paris, and there's a Malagasy community, and they were shocked. So I think it will create a conversation. It will be screened in Madagascar too, the film. And so this is the way to create a public discourse about this thing. I don't think that the West can, if we spend money or whatever, I don't think this will really go to the core of the problem. There needs to be a public discourse in Madagascar itself, and they need to see that this is no way that they can run a prison system. So I think that's how to do.
Okay. So our time is slowly running out. So I would like to thank you so much for joining us from Vienna.
Thank you to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very good luck with all your precious work that you do in Madagascar, and you really reveal so many like new information that we here in Central Europe, we can't even imagine that a situation like that is happening there. So thank you very much to the audience. I would like to just remind that you can watch ZAHO ZAY the films, the film by Maéva and Georg still one more week online. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I guess we can recommend it all who are sitting here. And yeah, so thank you again, merci, danke. And yeah, we hope to welcome you at the Ji.hlava, hopefully in a physical format again in the future.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
finger crossed.
So thank you so much.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.